Well, joining us now is Christopher Bedford, executive editor of Common Sense Society. Chris, great to see you as always. A lot to get to today, but first, let's talk about former President Trump's federal indictment. I want to get your thoughts on that and where you see this all going.
Oh, it's hard to see where it's all going, but I think Alan Dershowitz, the famous former Clinton lawyer, had a good take on this, where he said the prosecutors had really one mission here. It wasn't necessarily to enforce the law, it was to get Donald Trump. Now, but that doesn't mean that Trump's not in trouble here. There's there's audio recordings of him bragging about some of this stuff. For example, there's a lot of evidence that's been put forward. Bill Barr, his former attorney general, says that he thinks that Donald Trump's in a lot of trouble, but there's a lot to be said for Trump's defense right now. It's going to rest on two different pillars. One, that this is basically a speeding ticket. This is not a felony. That there's no reason for them to be going after him in such a way. Dershowitz agrees with that. And two, that the Department of Justice was unethical in its pursuit, whether it's threats against the lawyer representing representing Donald Trump's co-defendant, essentially in this case, or whether it was the way that they raided Mar-a-Lago and how they went after him and compared that to Mike Pence, for example, or Hillary Clinton, or even Joe Biden's mishandling this information. And then finally, was this information actually used to endanger the security of the United States? Was it used in espionage, or was it used maybe in conversation and bragging around Mar-a-Lago? That's going to make a big difference in this.
On a different note, over the weekend, a number of Pride events took place in Washington, D.C., including at the White House. But it was a post that President Biden tweeted out yesterday that seemed to ruffle a lot of feathers. It was a picture of the Pride flag hanging from the White House and saying, quote, "Today, the people's house, your house, sends a clear message to the country and to the world. America is a nation of pride." Chris, I want to get your reaction to that and why you think this particular tweet garnered so much negative attention.
Because it broke basic U.S. flag code, and it dishonored the country. It's against the code, essentially, which our government enforces, to put a flag central or above the United States flag. And the White House, the center of our government, did that with an ideological movement to say that this was central to American identity. Usually nations only get their flags replaced when they lose a war and are conquered. And I think that's what a lot of people feel like, whether it's through the removal of statues, the fact that the Pride flag is put above the American flag. And Byron York had a really good column earlier today in the Washington Examiner. He pointed out, compare the D-Day pronouncement by President Joe Biden. Compare the Memorial Day announcement by President Joe Biden. These used a combination of bravery and courage 3 times in both pronouncements combined. That was blown out of the water by Joe Biden's pronouncement at the Pride celebration at the White House. And it just shows that what's actually central to this administration and what doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, meantime, in Montgomery County, Maryland, last week, a group of Muslim parents and parental and religious freedom rights advocates held a protest because the school district no longer is allowing parents to opt out their children out of classes that deal with family life and human sexuality, including subjects like transgenderism and homosexuality. What's more, even some of the Muslim students spoke out against the coursework themselves at a school board meeting. Chris, what more do you know about this? And I know the state of Maryland actually allows parents to opt out. So why is Montgomery County, why are they doing things differently here?
Montgomery County is radical. A lot of the teachers' unions have been radical. A lot of that was exposed during COVID. It's been exposed since parents during homeschooling have gotten involved and seen what their children are actually reading. I remember a rally just 3 years ago in Montgomery County where one teacher said that they were willing to put their bodies into the gears of the capitalist machine to grind it to a halt. That's what they were trying to do, not really keeping closed for COVID, but doing that. And that's what they're doing with a lot of this sexual agenda. It's not about canceling people or ignoring different people's lived experiences. It's about indoctrinating children. Now, a small group of really active people are able to push this through in a lot of places. Well, Montgomery County is not conservative at all. Even in conservative counties, that sort of thing happens because of a vocal minority. So it's good to see parents out there who say, we're willing to be a vocal minority too, or a vocal majority. We're willing to get involved, because it's not just opinion polls that are going to change this country. It's parents getting involved and saying, no, absolutely not. You won't do this to our kids.
Chris, we have about 30 seconds left or so, but curious what else you're following.
I'm following that Maine abortion law you talked about. 24 weeks was previously the abortion law. And earlier this spring, Derek Hall was drafted onto the Seahawks football team. He was 6'3" and 256 pounds. He was born at 23 weeks. So now when abortion advocates are trying to push for bigger expansion past viability, they're killing people. The science is against them, and he's a really shining example of a brave mother and a brave young man and what you can accomplish despite what a lot of these naysayers claim.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for bringing up that point. We appreciate and always appreciate your insights. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.